The report on the table said that no one was missing in Nosha, and Ivet Cole had spent the morning reading the names of 11 missing people, so she was watching the senior arbiter's liaison lie to her superiors in the most beautiful room she had ever stood in. The room was in the Accord's headquarters, up on the cliff top, with windows the height of two men looking down over the harbor, the white stone quays, the clean water, the commercial quarter shining along the front like a row of polished teeth. Her city. Ivet had been born half a mile from this window in the staff housing behind the headquarters, a guard captain's daughter raised on the waterfront's wide, bright streets, and from this height Nosha looked exactly the way it had looked her whole life, which was perfect. There have been no disappearances, the liaison said smoothly, hands folded. No disturbed graves in the harbor cemetery. Whatever your detection sweep registered, honored Inquisitors, I assure you its cause is not a matter of missing persons. Our records are thorough. Senior Inquisitor Odell did not look up from the sweep charts. Your records, she said, cover which districts? A pause, one heartbeat too long. The city, the liaison said. Said Odell in the voice of a woman who had been an Inquisitor for 30 years and had heard the word city do that particular work before, and Ivet looked back down at the paper in her own hands. The second paper, the one that had not come from the arbiter's office, the one Odell had obtained from a source she had not named, with its 11 names, all of them from the interior districts, none of them appearing in any record the city kept. 9 of the 11 were already dead when they went missing. That was the detail Ivet could not put down. 9 of them had died of ordinary things, fever, age, the winter, and been buried in the interior's pauper trench with the city's usual ceremony, which was none. And then someone had come in the night, and quietly, carefully, without one line of it reaching a single official record, harvested them. They went into the interior that afternoon, and Ivet learned that she had lived 26 years in a city she had never been to. There was no wall, that was the thing that unsettled her most after. No gate, no checkpoint, nothing a mapmaker would draw, just a street that ran back from the bright commercial front, past the last of the whitewashed facades, and then a line you could feel in the soles of your boots where the paving stopped being repaired. 10 steps. The lamps went from glass to bare iron and then to nothing. The buildings laned. The smell changed, damp tallow, too many people in too little space, and the light itself seemed to arrive poorer, as if even the sun were subject to the maintenance schedule. Half a mile from the marble waterfront, where delegations from every port in the world drank the Accord's wine, and it was another country. You've gone quiet, Cole, Odell said. I grew up here, Ivet said. 20 minutes walk from this street, I've never stood on it. She looked down the leaning row of tenements, at the laundry lines and the running gutter and the faces already withdrawing from windows at the sight of them. I thought I knew this city. You knew the half they show, Odell said, without particular heat, the way she said everything. Everyone from the front does, that's what the front is for. The interior taught Ivet its second lesson within 100 yards, and the lesson was about herself. She had worn the gray her whole adult life with a specific quiet pride. The pale cloak, the rune-etched half-armor, the masked helm hanging at her belt, to Ivet these had always meant what the oath said they meant. The line between civilization and catastrophe, the people who stood on it so no one else had to. On the waterfront, children waved at Inquisitors. In the interior, the street emptied in front of them like water finding a drain. It was not panic, it was worse, it was practice. Shutters came to quietly. Doors closed without slamming, the way you close a door when you don't want to draw the attention of the thing you're closing it against. A woman gathered her 2 children off a stoop with an economy of motion that said she had done it before many times, and her eyes met Ivet's for one flat second over the smaller child's head, and there was nothing in them Ivet recognized from the waterfront. Not respect, not safety. The specific carefulness you keep for something that can take people. They think we're here for someone, Ivet said quietly. We usually are, said Odell. Behind them, silent, walked the third member of the team, and the emptying street gave him more room than it gave the 2 Inquisitors together. Wick was Veilguard, the Accord's leashed lightning, a broad graying man who had been shackled once and had chosen service, if chosen was the word, and who wore the permanent binding sigils on his wrists and collarbones under his sleeves where the interior could not see them. The interior did not need to see them. The interior knew what a Veilguard was. Some of the people behind those shutters had watched a neighbor's son become one. The city guard found them at the 3rd Street, 4 of them, well fed in a district that wasn't, materializing with the ease of men on home ground. Inquisitors, the sergeant's bow was correct and his eyes were quick. An honor. You'll want escort in the interior, it's not the front, begging your pardons. If you tell me who you've come to collect, we can. "We're not collecting," Odal said. "We're asking about the pauper trench off the old cistern lane, who watches it at night." Something moved through the sergeant's face fast and was gone. "No one watches it, Senior Inquisitor. It's a trench. Nothing in it worth a watchman's wage." 11 of your residents would disagree, Ivet said before she could stop herself. If they could. The sergeant looked at her with the flat, pleasant patience of a man doing arithmetic about whose protection extended where, and Ivet understood in that look a third thing about the interior. The guard was not what the guard was on the waterfront. Here the uniform was a toll gate with legs, and whatever was harvesting the interior's dead had chosen its hunting ground with a terrible intelligence, the one district in the world's most watched city where the watchers were paid not to write things down. "We'll walk ourselves," Odal told the sergeant. "You can go and report us to whoever you report to." It took 2 days, and the interior gave up its truth grudgingly, in fragments to Ivet specifically, because Odal had worked out by the second morning that the district would say to the young Nosha-born Inquisitor, with the troubled eyes, what it would never say to Grey Seniority or to the leashed man. A trench digger for coin, admitting the ground had been opened and reclosed by careful hands 4 times since winter. A tallow chandler whose cellar shared a wall with the old cistern works, who had heard on still nights something below not rats. Rats don't keep hours. An old woman who tended the trench's one unofficial shrine and who took Ivet's hand in both of hers and told her about the smell that came up through the cistern grates on cold mornings, a smell like a slaughter-yard scrubbed with lie there and gone. And a boy, maybe 10, who followed Ivet half a street to tell her in a whisper the thing the adults wouldn't, that everyone knew where the ghost lived. Everyone. It lived down the cistern stair behind the fallen fuller's yard, and it had lived there 2 years, and it took only the dead, and nobody had told the guard because, the boy said it simply, a fact of his world like weather, you don't tell the guard anything, and anyway it only takes the dead, and the dead are the only people in the interior the accord can't hurt anymore. Ivet walked back to the tavern billet that evening with the boy's sentence in her chest like a swallowed stone, and found she could not decide which half of it was worse. They went down the cistern stair an hour before dawn, when the interior was darkest and its watchers slept, and the dark below Nosha took them the way deep water takes a swimmer gradually, and then entirely. The stair was old city, pre-accord, cut when the harbor town had needed water more than it needed anything else. A spiral of worn steps descending past the fuller's dead cellars into the cistern galleries, vaulted brick, dry now for a century, the air cool and mineral and utterly still. Odal led with a shuttered lamp. Wick came last, a silence with weight to it. Ivet walked the middle with the detection lantern cradled against her chest, its rune glass dark. Then, at the second landing, the rune glass was not dark. A glow woke in it faint, deep in the lens, the color of a drowned moon. Ivet had carried a detection lantern for 3 years and seen it flare a dozen times, the hot amber of hedgework, the quick green of unlicensed mending. She had never seen this color. It did not flicker the way living casting flickered. It simply shone, low and constant and cold, the light of something that was not being done but had been done and done and done until it had soaked into the stones. "Seigneur," she breathed, "the lantern." Odal looked at the color for a long moment. In the glow, her face was older than Ivet had ever seen it. "Manacles loose in their cases," Odal said softly. "Wick, nothing unleashed unless I speak your release word or I'm dead. Cole, your first boundary work." It was not a question, and her voice did something Ivet had never heard it do, which was gentle itself. "The fear is correct. Everything in you that wants to go back up the stair is functioning properly. Bring it with us. It's the ones who aren't afraid down here that don't come home. On me, slow." The laboratory announced itself first as order. That was the thing Ivet had not been braced for, not horror but tidiness. The gallery opened through a robbed-out wall into the cistern's great chamber, and the lamplight went in ahead of them, and what it found was clean. Swept brick, trestle tables in ranks, their surfaces scrubbed pale, tools laid out on cloth rolls in graded sizes, gleaming the way a surgeon keeps them, the way a craftsman keeps them. Shelves of jars in ordered rows, each labeled in a small exact hand, their contents suspended in cloudy preserving spirit and reduced by the poor light to shapes. Shapes Ivet's eyes kept beginning to resolve and her mind kept declining to finish. A copper still, coils of waxed thread, basins covered. The lion-cold smell of the shrinekeeper's mornings, everywhere now the smell of a slaughter-yard kept like a chapel. And down the center of the chamber, on the ranked tables, lay the harvest. They were shrouded, everyone. 11 tables held 11 still forms under clean gray sheets, squared at the corners, and beside each, on a small stand, a wooden tag on a cord, and Ivet, moving down the silent rank with her heart striking the inside of her ribs like a fist on a door, read the tags, and the tags were names. Marin Ossie, washerwoman, D. Midwinter. Cal Bruce D of the Fever. The 11 missing of the interior, unrecorded by their city, lying in the dark under a stranger's clean linen, named, dated, remembered by the thing that had stolen them. He keeps better records than the Arbiter, Odal murmured, and there was something in her voice that was not entirely irony. Ivet's fear changed key in that room, and she would spend a long time afterward trying to explain to herself how. On the stair it had been animal, dark, depth, the drowned moon glow. In the chamber it became something with a mind in it, because everything her eyes touched said the same two things at once, and the two things did not fit, and the not fitting was worse than any gore could have been. Care and violation, reverence and theft. Hands that had washed these bodies and combed their hair and stitched, she made herself look at the third table, where the shroud lay imperfectly and a forearm showed, stitched long clean incisions closed again afterward with a fineness her own chirurgeons could not have matched. Whoever worked in this room loved the dead. Whoever worked in this room opened them like ledgers. Both were true, and the lantern against her chest burned its cold moon color steadily brighter with every rank of tables, and her hands had begun to shake in a way she could not order them out of. Then she heard the breathing that wasn't. It came from the chamber's dark end, past the lamplight, a slow, dry regularity, air moving through a throat at rest, except that it had no catch and no variation, nothing that a sleeping chest does, a rhythm the way a pump is a rhythm, and Odal's hand closed on Ivet's shoulder and stopped her mid-step, and the lamp's beam crept up the far dark and found them. Two figures stood at the final arch, upright, utterly still, a big man and a thin one, grave gray, dressed in clean workman's clothes, their eyes open and at rest and aimed at nothing, standing the way no living thing stands without the thousand small betrayals of balance, stone still in the dark with the not breath sighing through them. Sentries, kept things, raised and washed and dressed and set at a door like lamps. They're not triggered, Odal breathed. Door wards, he'll know we're here the moment we pass them or put one down, so we do neither until. A voice came through the arch from the light beyond it, and it was a human voice, tired and even and unsurprised. You can pass them, Inquisitors, it said. They only stop the guard. I've been expecting the Grey for 2 years. Come through. Mind the tables, they're people. The man at the workbench in the inner chamber was small, 50-odd, in a leather apron, with spectacles pushed up on a bald head and the ruined, careful hands of someone who had done fine work by bad light for decades, and Ivet, who had spent 3 years imagining what she would feel standing before an unbound necromancer, had imagined dread and had not imagined this, that he would look like every corpse washer and bone setter in every poor parish in the world. Because that, it turned out, was what he was. Ossian Creel, Odal said, the name from the old interior registries, 2 years cold. Corpse washer, anatomist unlicensed, practitioner unbound. All three, Creel agreed. He set down the instrument he was cleaning, squared it on its cloth, and turned to face them with his empty hands loose at his sides. Behind him, on a table apart from all the others, raised, curtained on 3 sides, lay a 12th shrouded form the tags had not accounted for. And your 2 gray and a veil guard, which for one corpse washer is almost flattering. You've read my tables then, walked my whole parish. He looked at Ivet as he said it, at the lantern in her hands still burning its cold moon. Go on, Inquisitor, you're the one it's eating. Say the word so we can talk plainly. What am I? A necromancer, Ivet said. There it is, Creel said mildly. The worst word in the world. Now let me tell you how a man gets there, since you've come all the way down my stair, and then you can do your work, and I won't resist you, and some of that is even true. I was born 4 streets up, Creel said. Interior, obviously. I washed the dead for this district for 30 years, same as my mother did. I set bones. I stitched what the guards' collections left of people who were slow to pay. And I was good, Inquisitors, I was better than good, I had the touch, and you know exactly what I mean by the touch, because measuring it is your trade. Things mended under my hands that shouldn't have. I was 20 when I understood what I had. I was 21 when I did the correct thing, the lawful thing, the waterfront thing. He smiled, and it was the tiredness thing in the room. I walked up your cliff top with my hat in my hands and asked the Pale Accord for a license to heal. And the Accord offered you the assessment, Odal said. And the assessment isn't a license, it's the choice. It's the choice, Creel agreed softly. Serve or the stone. Sign the gray ledger where the collar runes, mend what the Accord tells you to mend where it tells you, for whom it tells you, or decline, and go into Nullstone until you reconsider. I asked what would happen to my district if I served, who would set the interior's bones. And the assessor, I remember this precisely, I have had 40 years to remember it precisely, the assessor said. That is not a factor the assessment weighs. So you ran, Ivet said. So I declined politely, went home, and became a criminal by continuing to exist, Creel said. I mended quietly for 40 years, one street at a time, always small, always hidden, because your lanterns don't reach down here if nothing flares, and I watch what this city actually is from underneath, which is a view you've had for what, Inquisitor Cole, 2 days. He had her name. Of course he had her name, the interior had given them his door, and the interior had evidently traded fair. 2 days, and it's already eating you. Imagine 40 years. The dead Creel, Odell said. 11 tables, get to the tables. The tables? He nodded slowly and moved, unhurried, hands visible, to stand beside the nearest shrouded form. My sister took the other road, you see. Sella had the touch too, stronger than mine, and she was braver or younger, and when they flagged her she signed. Served the accord 9 years. And in the 9th year we were told she died in service. An incident contained no further information releasable, her effects returned in a box the size of a loaf. And I am a man who has read bodies for 50 years, Inquisitors, and they would not give me hers. For the first time something moved under the evenness. He let it pass through and away, an old practiced grief. So, a corpse washer with the touch, 40 years in the dark, and a question your institution would not answer. What does the accord do with its dead? What was done to her? I could not ask the living. The living lie for salaries. I resolved to ask the only honest witnesses this city has ever had. The dead, Ivet said. The dead don't lie, Creel said. Flesh is a record, Inquisitor. Every year of hunger is written in a bone. Every guard collection, every fever the front's physicians never rode down to treat, every load carried too young, it's all written, and I learned to read it, and then I learned to do the other thing, the thing you have the word for. Because a record that can stand up and answer is better than a record that can't. He rested his hand very lightly on the shrouded shoulder of Marin Ossie, washerwoman, dead of midwinter. I take only what this city throws away. I take them whole from a trench their government doesn't guard because it cannot imagine they have value, and I read them and I write down their names, which is more than Nosha ever did, and when I have learned what their lives can teach, I return them. Ask your trench digger. 4 openings since winter. 2 were me putting people back. You raised them, Ivet said. Her voice came out low and unsteady, and she made herself hold his eyes. Dress it in whatever you like. The 2 at the arch, you put the dead on their feet and set them at your door like tools. That's the line, Creel. That's the one line this whole drowned world agrees on. 200 years ago the dead rose and civilization ended, and every child on every coast knows the boundary between living and dead is the one thing you do not. Do not what, girl? And now for the first time the mildness cracked, and what was under it was not madness. I've almost wished it had been madness. It was 40 years of argument honed. Do not disturb, come here, come and say it to me over the tables. Your accord stands on that line like scripture, the boundary, the sacred boundary, and I will grant them this. The 2 dead men at my arch are a real crime against something, and I did it with open eyes, and I will answer for it. Now you answer me. Your order takes the living. It took my sister living. It takes children with the touch out of these districts every season. The interior could recite you the names, they don't forget. They just don't tell you, and it offers them the stone or the collar and calls the collar a choice and works them until they die of it and buries what's left where no brother can read the body. That man behind you, and Creel's hand rose and pointed gently past Ivet's shoulder at Wick, who had stood through all of it like weather. Show her your wrists, Veilguard. She's new, perhaps she's never looked properly. Sigils that cannot come off. A word that can drop him where he stands, held by whoever owns his leash this year. 20 years of that, is it? 25. Wick said nothing. Wick looked at the Necromancer with a face like a shut door, and did not move, and somehow the not moving was the loudest thing in the chamber. I raise the dead who are done needing anything, Creel said quietly, turning back to Ivet. And your accord binds the living who need everything, and between the 2 of us, Inquisitor, only one is called an abomination, and it is not the one wearing the warrant. I am a small evil. I know precisely what I am, a grave robber with a broken heart and too much skill. I have had 40 years alone down here to take my own measure, and I've taken it honestly. Have you taken yours? You walked through my district to reach me. You saw the doors close. 2 days, and your certainty is bleeding out through your boots. I can see it from here. So answer the question, and I'll go peacefully into whatever manacles you like. He spread his ruined, careful hands. Which of us serves the monster? And Ivet Cole, 3 years sworn, born on the waterfront, daughter of the Grey, stood in the dark heart of her own city with the lantern burning cold against her chest, and searched herself for the answer she had carried her whole life, and found the place where it had been. I don't know, she said. No, Creel said very gently, like a diagnosis. Neither do I. That's the true horror of this world, girl. Not my tables. That nobody clean is coming. What broke it was not the Inquisitors, and it was not Creel. It was the city guard. They came down the cistern stair with torches and no craft at all, 6 of them. The sergeant's men, sent by whoever the sergeant reported to learn what the Inquisitors had found in the district's books before the Inquisitors could carry it up the cliff, and they came loud, and they came into the outer chamber among the shrouded tables with their torches swinging. And one of them, seeing the two dead sentries at the arch, did the guard thing, the waterfront thing. The thing Ivat understood in the half-second it took to happen that Creel had built his whole quiet crime to avoid. He shouted, and he put his blade into a standing dead man. Everything after that happened in the dark, fast, and wrong. Ivat saw Creel's face in the lamplight as the sentry fell, saw him reach, the way you'd lunge for a dropped glass, some instinct of craft or mercy or rage, his hands coming up in the cold in the air deepening like a plunge, and Odal was already moving, manacles out, shouting the arrest right, and the guards were bullying in among the tables with iron and torchlight. And somewhere under all of it, in the crossing of panic and power and one old man's 40 years of grief, the working slipped. Creel would have said, did say after, in the little of after he had, that he never gave the order. Ivat believed him. It did not matter. 11 shrouds moved. The dead came off the tables all at once, and they came up mindless. Not the doorwards kept stillness, not anything anyone commanded. What rose in that chamber rose the way the world's dead rise, blank, hungry for nothing, driven by nothing, violence without a single thought inside it, and it did not know Creel, and it did not know the guard from the gray from the man who had washed and named and shrouded every one of them. Marin Ossie, washerwoman, took the nearest torch-bearing guard by the head with both hands. The big sentry, blade still in him, folded the man who had stabbed him against a pillar with a sound Ivat would keep. The chamber became a black chaos of overturned tables and swinging torchlight and the moon-cold lantern glow, 11 dead moving through it at everyone, and Creel screaming into the dark, not commands. His control was gone, and he knew it. He was screaming names. Marin, no, Cal. Stop, I'm sorry, stop. As if the dead had ever, in the whole history of the drowned world, answered to being loved. Wick, Odal's voice cut the dark, and she spoke the release word. Ivat had never seen a Veilguard unbound. She understood, watching, everything the Accord's doctrine had ever claimed about why control existed, and everything Creel had said about what the collar cost, both at once, both true, the way everything in Nosha was both at once. Wick opened his hands and the air went white. Force moved through the chamber in disciplined tides, never touching the living, hurling the dead off the guards, off Odal, pinning them to walls with a pressure that made the brick groan, a decade-starved power spending itself in perfect obedient arcs. And above the sigils at his wrists, the runes burned through his sleeves like brands, feeding on him even now, taxing him for every act of rescue, and his face, while he saved their lives, was the same shut door. Cole, Odal had a guard by the collar, dragging him clear. Her arm was dark with blood, not all his. The source, dampen the source. The manacles, cut the caster, kill the casting. Ivat came up off the floor with the spell-dampening irons in her fists and went for Creel through the overturning dark, and could not reach him, because 2 of his dead had reached him first. He did not run from them. That was the last thing, the thing Ivat would carry up the stair and up the cliff and into every gray year that came after. Ossian Creel, with his risen dead closing on him blank and pitiless from both sides, did not run and did not shield himself, though the cold in the air said he still had power left to spend. He turned away from the dead entirely, turned his back on his own ending, and used what he had and what he was for one motion. He threw the curtained 12th table backward, out of the melee into the alcove's shelter, and set his body between the dead and it. His sister, the 12th shroud the one apart, raised on its dais and curtained and kept, and never in 2 years of unbound power and 40 of grief, never raised. His one line. He had told Ivat the truth after all. He knew precisely what he was, and there had been one thing in that chamber he would not do to know an answer, and at the end he spent himself keeping the mindless world off it. Ivat hit the nearer dead man with her whole armored weight, too late by a half-second that would be years long in her memory, and Wick's force took the other into a pillar, too late by the same half-second, and the manacles closed on Creel's wrists in her hands, dampening flooding the chamber, the moonglow dying in the lantern, 10 dead dropping mid-lunge across the room like cut strings, and it was already done. The dead drop when the magic dies, but they had already been at him. She knelt in the sudden ringing dark and held the irons on a small ruined man who was not going to live to the top of his own stair, and he knew it, and his face, unbelievably, was at peace. Well, Creel managed. His spectacles were gone. His eyes found the curtained alcove, confirmed it untouched, and came back to her. Better this than the stone. Ask them, Inquisitor. The tired, even voice going out like the glow. What your order does with its dead. You're the one who doesn't know things now. Terrible way to live. It's how you find everything out. Creel. Her name was Sella Creel, he said. Put her in the record. Somebody should be in a record, honestly. And then the interior of Nosha lost its corpse washer, its bone setter, its small evil, and its only anatomist quietly on his own swept floor, among the people he had named. The Accord wrote its report within the week, and it was clean the way the waterfront was clean. Rogue practitioner boundary violation contained. Casualties, 3 city guard in the line of duty, the interior districts unmentioned. The 11 names, unmentioned, the dead of the Pauper Trench had never officially been missing and so could not officially be found. The liaison's summary praised the operation's discretion. The senior arbiter's office expressed satisfaction that Nosha remained, as ever, a city without disappearances. Ivet read it in the beautiful room above the harbor, and then she did the first insubordinate thing of her career. She wrote the other report. Names, all of them. The 11 of the trench, with the dates Creel's own tags had preserved. Sella Creel, 9 years in Accord service, died in service, effects returned, remains unaccounted, filed as a formal records query. She was 3 ranks too junior to file, rooted up the chain where it would die in some drawer on some clifftop, but filed, time-stamped, existing. And Ossian Creel, corpse washer of the interior, practitioner, criminal, with a single line of assessment in the box her training said should read threat neutralized. She wrote, he kept the only honest census this city has. Then she signed it because Creel had been right about one more thing. Somebody should be in a record honestly. Odell read it over her shoulder, said nothing for a long time, and then did not order her to strike a word of it, which from 30 gray years was either a benediction or a warning, and was probably, like everything in Nosha, both. The interior held the funerals a week later, when the Accord returned the 11 for burial because Ivet stood in a clifftop office and did not leave until it was agreed. She went down for it off-duty out of the gray in a plain coat and stood at the back of the Pauper Trench in the rain among people who knew exactly what she was despite the coat, and no one spoke to her and no doors opened. She had not expected them to. 2 days does not unclose a district's doors, nor does one funeral, nor probably does one Inquisitor's career, however it was going to be spent now. The shrinekeeper met her eye once across the trench, and gave her a nod of perhaps an inch, and that was the whole of it, and Ivet took it home like wages. Because here was what she had, walking back up toward the bright half-city she had been born in, past the line where the paving resumed and the lamps came back and Nosha put its marble face on. She had the question. Creel's question, lodged where her certainty used to sit, asking itself now in his tired, even voice at everything she looked at. Which of us serves the monster? She had no answer. She had stopped expecting one. What she had understood, somewhere between the tables and the trench, was what the question was for. It was not for answering. It was for carrying. It was the instrument you took with you into the beautiful rooms and held against everything said in them, the way she had once held a lantern. The gray cloak was still hers. She had thought hard about that and kept it, and she could have said why in Odell's flat voice, because the interior did not need one more person who saw clearly and left. Someone had to be inside the walls, counting the uncounted, filing the queries that died in drawers, standing in offices without leaving. Small evils, Creel had said, know their own measure. Perhaps small goods worked the same way. Behind her, evening came down on the interior, and the lamps that existed were lit, and the doors that closed were closed. Somewhere under it all, a swept chamber stood dark and empty, 11 tables bare, 1 curtained alcove at rest. Sella Creel had gone into the ground beside her brother, in the trench with her name said aloud over her, which was more than the clifftop had ever given either of them. And the city of Nosha faced the sea and shone.